Hello and welcome back to Geek and Speak, the Geek and Seek podcast. Today we are doing part 3 of our tier list, going over the top 100 commanders according to EDHRec. If you haven't seen part 1 and part 2, we've already looked at 40 commanders. We're looking at another 20 today. So today we're going to get just over halfway going over the top 100 episodes. But if you haven't seen part 1, part 2, go check it out and then come back and enjoy part 3. Joined with me today is Jason. How's it going, Jason?
It's going pretty good. I'll just get this out of the way so that, I'm not taking up too much time, but the Lions are 9-2 and things are going really well. And I made a lot of money betting on them this past weekend. So that's really great. I'm pretty happy about that. Other than that, I think that we have a pretty good list today. I think we'll agree on a lot of stuff, but where we differ, we might vastly differ.
I can get behind that. And we missed you. We missed you last week, so I hope you had a good.
I missed you guys too.
Up with your family and stuff.
I'm excited to see you guys tomorrow.
Yes. Tomorrow we are filming our annual Christmas episode. If you haven't seen this will be our third year doing a Commander gameplay Christmas episode. So go check out the last couple of years of that. That was a good time. But we also have Preston with us. How's it going, Preston? Heck yeah. And I am your host, Morgan. I am also very excited for tomorrow. Tomorrow when we're recording this, it'll be a couple days ago by the time this video comes out. But we are third annual Christmas Commander gameplay episode. Those are always some of my favorite episodes to do. And it's just a good time getting together with my homies and playing Magic, especially after this long week. I'm looking forward to it. So before we get into today's topic, if you would like to support the show, do all the YouTube algorithm stuff. Go check out other videos that you haven't seen, such as part 1 and part 2 of this series, liking the video, leaving comments. And if you want to go the extra mile, you can also head over to patreon.com/geekandseekyoutube. And you can also join our Discord. Find a link to that in the description as well. Favorite comment of the week. We kind of skimped out on doing this a couple episodes recently, so we picked 2 to make up for lost time. This is from the most recent episode of our Commander gameplay series. This is Dew Slayer, also known as Cody. He says, "It was a blast playing with these guys. 10 out of 10. Would do it again." Yes. Jason, how did you know Cody?
We went to high school together.
Okay, yeah. So he filled in for the CEDH episode of our gameplay series, which was really nice because otherwise I don't think we would have been able to do that episode. So it was really nice of him getting to hop on. And then this other comment. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Sorry, good buddy of mine. Love you, Cody.
And then this other comment of the week is from Raf's Babe, also known as Charisse. Thank you so much for making this. I had great joy seeing all the bunnies. Love and your includes to the deck I put together. That is from the Hair Apparent deck tech video I did last week, 2 weeks ago, whenever that was, with the epic thumbnail. That's a VeggieTales reference. But that was a deck list that she had made, and I just wanted to make some tweaks, made a video of that. So thank you, Charisse, for the awesome starting point. And if you would like to, I think we're going to do more videos like that, where I just take deck lists, make my own tweaks, and make videos about them. So if you have a cool idea of a deck, make sure you join our Discord. That's the best way to get in touch with us. That's the best way to get deck lists to us. So yeah, join our Discord. All right, we are now heading into the next 20 commanders. I'll say it. I've said it once. I'll say it again. If you haven't seen part 1 and part 2, we've already talked about 40 commanders on the top 100 according to EDHRec. Go check those out. Come back for this one, and then we'll have 2 more installments within the next month or so where we finally round out the list. But Preston, before we jump into this list, can you remind people what our grading criteria is?
Yeah, so near the top of the list, our S tier level commanders are ones we think are fun to play, ones we think are fun to play against, strong without being too strong. Not entirely power level dependent, but obviously that will be a factor. If a card's really strong, that'll be something we mention, but it's not the end all be all of how we rate everything.
Yeah. All right. Hopping into our 20 cards we're talking about today. This is the 60th most played commander according to EDHRec. Jason, do you mind taking this first one?
Sure thing. So, the first card that we're going to talk about today is Sithis Harvest Hand. It is a 1/2 nymph for 1 green and 1 white, and it says, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you gain 1 life and draw a card. So this is essentially kind of like a Tatiova-esque, but instead of playing lands, it's whenever you cast enchantment spells, it's enchantment. This is an enchantment deck. So Morgan gave it a C, and Preston and I both gave it a B. I gave it a B because it's just like kind of, it feels very copy and paste from a lot of things that Simic do, but just with the Selesnya twist, making it enchantments instead. Which, I mean, it's probably one of the best. I would say probably top 3, if not top 2, enchantment commander, just off of sheer simplicity and just straight value printed on the card. But I don't think it's too super unique. It's unique to enchantments for sure, but as far as like what this card is trying to do, it's very basic, and it can be very strong, and it can get out of hand quickly if you build the deck right. And since it's enchantments, there's the possibility of going in like the stacks direction, which is necessarily not entirely fun. I don't think most people are building Sithis that way, but it does open the door for that. So that's why I gave it a B. Couldn't really bump it up to an A for that.
Yeah, Preston, since you're also in the B range, why don't you go next?
Yeah, so I feel pretty similar to Jason. I could have maybe gone C because this is one of those commanders where it's so ubiquitous and like strong compared to a lot of the competitors. But I did decide to give it a B because recently there's been so many different enchantment types. So like if you wanted to focus in on something a little more unique, you have a lot more options now, and I think you can build very interesting versions of Sithis. But most of them are still going to be that general good stuff enchantments. So that's why I put B.
Yeah, I'm a little lower on it. I gave it the C. I didn't ever make the comparison in my mind that Jason made with it being similar to Tatiova, but I think both are that problematic thing that I've talked about on the podcast before, where it's just like a commander is low mana, it tells you to do a thing, and if you do the thing, you draw cards. And to me, that's just like really boring commander design. And that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that it's just not very interesting. And I think the problem is that Sithis is just like the most generic enchantress ever. Like there's in green and white, there's already a bunch of cards that say play an enchantment, draw a card. And now you have a commander that does that in the 2 colors where you're more likely to do that.
It gains you 1 life.
Okay, yeah, okay. But you're also in green white, so gaining life wasn't going to be hard for you anyways. But as Preston kind of pointed out, there's like all sorts of like niche kinds of enchantments that you can build. And I think that if you're going to build one of those niche kinds of enchantments, there are good commanders for those specific archetypes. And even if there's not, I think there's just more interesting enchantment commanders that point you in a more specific direction. So I just really don't like Sithis, but still going to average out to a B. There she is. Boop, right there in the B. All right, Preston, do you want to take us through the next one?
Yeah, I'll go up next. So here we have Voja, Jaws of the Conclave. For 2, a red, a green, and a white. It's a wolf with Vigilance, Trample, and Ward 3. It's a 5/5. And it has whenever Voja, Jaws of the Conclave attacks, you put X +1/+1 counters on each creature you control, where X is the number of elves you control, and you draw a card for each wolf you control. You gave it a C, Jason gave it an A, and I gave it a B for an average of B. For me, I do kind of like how it puts 2 strange creature types together that you don't normally see. So that is a little interesting, but I'm just not the biggest elf ball player in the world, and wolves aren't my thing either. So I kind of like it, but it's just sort of meh to me.
Jason,
all
you're
the-
high on this one.
yeah.
Why so high on it?
So I'm definitely a little bit more biased towards this card because I do like wolves a lot. I had a werewolf deck, as you know, you guys probably know. I had Tovolar, but I just think that the build of this commander is really interesting because you get payoffs. You get payoffs for building it as like a split creature type. So it really kind of like, especially with elves, it narrows the types of cards that you want to put into the deck. You know, you can build it in certain ways because there's so many different elves out there, that you could throw into this deck to do one thing or another. But I just love that it cares about these two things, and it buffs your creatures and draws you cards. And it's a 5/5 for 5 mana. So, you know, while it does have all the keyword abilities on here, you know, Vigilance, Trample, and Ward 3, I still think that it's a little bit more on the fair end because of how high cost it is. It gets destroyed once, now it costs 7. It gets destroyed twice, now it costs 9. I mean, honestly, because you're in red, you definitely could have some haste enablers to get this thing swinging, and start buffing things up and drawing cards pretty quickly. But I just feel like that's just going to enable you to have a fun game because you're drawing more cards, so you're going to be able to rebuild or at least get your commander back out more consistently and more reliably because you're able to draw cards while still building a solid board presence. So that's why I really like this card, is because even if people go at you and get it and your commander gets destroyed often, it still feels like you're going to be able to have a fun game.
I hate this commander. It's so last episode, Pressa and I talked about. I know you weren't here, Jason, but we talked about. I think we talked about Winota, and then we also talked about Magda, which are other commanders like this, and the fact that they make you play like two archetypes of creatures that you wouldn't necessarily play together that often, and it makes you play them together. So that sounds great on the surface, but in the case of both Winota and Magda, Press and I were like, well, hold on, there's a bunch of problems here. And I feel like Voja's the same way. Voja gets so big, so fast, and is refilling your hand, and you're redeploying more threats. It's a must-kill commander that has Ward 3, right? This was one of the cards that people were using as justification for banning Jeweled Lotus, because you get this down, and then like everyone else doesn't have even if they have the kill spell, they don't have the mana to pay for ward. Like this was one of the cards that justified the banning of Jeweled Lotus. It's that good. And like 5 mana, you're like, oh, commander tax will become a problem. No, it won't, because you're in the ramp colors and your elves. You have a bunch of mana dorks on top of the other ramp shenanigans you're doing. So this thing is just uber strong. I couldn't go lower than a C because I know people like it, and I know people like elves, and I know people like wolves. I think wolves are kind of cool. I think elves is kind of boring, but like I'm not going to yuck your yum if you like them. So I couldn't go lower than a C, but just like this card is like way too strong. The Ward 3 specifically is obnoxious, and it becomes a must-kill threat right away, basically. Still going to average out to a B, though. So, Voja? Above or below Sithis, though?
I think it's above Sithis, because I think this is a lot more interesting than Sithis is.
I think that's probably true. Like, if you just play your favorite wolves and your favorite elves together, you probably end up with an interesting deck. I could go with that. All right, next up is Tivit, Seller of Secrets, which is for 3 and Esper, a 6-mana 6/6 Sphinx Rogue with flying in Ward 3. I know what I just said about Ward, but hold on. It has Council's Dilemma. When it enters the battlefield or deals combat damage to a player, starting with you, each player votes for evidence or bribery. For each evidence vote, investigate, meaning you create a clue token. And then for each bribery vote, you create a treasure token. While voting, you may vote an additional time. So it's kind of cool, like if you just are playing like token stuff, like if you're wanting clue stuff or treasure stuff, that's kind of cool. I've thought about putting this in my clue deck before, but really the real oomph of interest here is you get to vote an additional time on voting cards. So you play a bunch of the other council's dilemma and stuff like that. Which forces you to play some really cool cards. A couple really busted cards that people don't like, but for the most part, just really neat cards. So Jason and I gave this an A, and Preston gave it an S. Yeah, Preston, S. Explain. That's high praise.
I've loved the voting mechanic ever since I started playing Commander, but I've never really had a lot of opportunities for it. And I've thought about building a voting like Commander deck 1,000 times. And if I was going to do it, I would probably choose Tivit. I'm kind of hoping they do a 5-color one at some point, just so I have all the options. But if I do eventually crack, Tivit will probably be the commander I go with. It's just such a fun thing.
A lot of it's green, right? Because of the like Lord of the Rings elf
well,
stuff.
All the colors have a bunch at this point, but yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, one of my favorite cards is Council's Judgment, where it's I think it's 3 and a white, and it's a sorcery that has Council's Dilemma. I think it's a sorcery, but basically everybody votes for a non-land permanent that you don't control, or something to that effect, and then you destroy something that's that has the most votes or is tied for the most votes. So sometimes if there's a 4-player game, that card can turn into destroy 4 things for like 3 or 4 mana. I just think that this commander is really, really interesting and unique. It has such a unique and specific ability that you are kind of limited to the way that you can build the deck, because you want to make sure that you have enough cards in there that allow you to like put voting out there and to start doing that. But also, one of the strongest cards ever printed is a voting card, and it's, Expropriate. So
that's the one I was talking about, where I was like, but people don't like that card. Yeah.
That card makes people really mad sometimes. But I don't think that should lower the value of this card, because it's not this card's fault that one specific card that gives you like at least one extra turn every time that you play it. It's just, this is so cool. I had to put it at A at least because of the cool factor behind this card. But it just, because of the Expropriate, I couldn't bump it up to S, because it just, it's in blue. It's enabling you to play Expropriate, and the deck is like subjectively worse if you don't play Expropriate. So
I guess that's why fair.
That's why I couldn't put it at S.
Yeah, I would also say that's fair, but I'm right there with you. It's an A. It's going up there because it's super, super cool. I think I've thought about putting in my Marnius Kelgar Clue deck before. I think I'm gonna give it a try, because I think, like, ideally you hope it sticks around for longer so you can make even more clues, but it does enter and it automatically give you a clue, so it's probably worth it, just at least on the cool factor. Even if I don't have other voting cards, it makes clues. It's cool.
Letting you vote an extra time is really cool, but this card is also pretty fair, because no matter what, you're either making a treasure token or you're making a clue token. Obviously the clue token is worse, but it's not like you're making a bunch of creatures or something like that, or giving creatures crazy keyword abilities for every time you vote or something like that.
Right. But whose turn is it to read? Preston, you want to read the next one?
Oh. No, it's me, because yeah.
Okay.
So next up we have Zaxara the Exemplary. For 1, a black, a green, and a blue, it's a Nightmare Hydra with Death Touch. It's a 2/3 that has tap, add 2 mana of any one color. And it says whenever you cast a spell with X in its mana cost, create a 0/0 green Hydra creature token, then put X +1/+1 counters on it. It's a Hydra's deck. More importantly, it is an X cost spells deck. This is probably, actually, you know what? No, I'm not going to say probably. This is the best X cost spells commander that you could possibly run. The main reason for that is I can't remember for the life of me the name of the enchantment. But it's a 1 mana enchantment. It's 1 blue. And it has a couple of different activated abilities on it that, like, the creature has, but the main 2 that are important is the main one that is important is 1 blue mana, untap enchanted creature. So that's an infinite combo. That's like it's technically a 2-card infinite combo because you need your commander, but like you're gonna play your commander no matter what. So it's almost like it's a 1-card infinite combo. So the fact that you can just generate an infinite amount of mana and cast all your X cost spells for 100 million if you want, like you just win the game right there. I did have this deck because this was a precon from the 2019 Commander set, I believe. Is either that or 2020. I can't exactly remember.
2020, yeah.
And I actually had the Zaxara deck, and it was a lot of fun to build, and it was a lot of fun to play. And I didn't do the infinite combo thing because it is just fun playing X cost spells and making hydras from it, and then you can add like token doublers or plus counters doublers or mana doubling just to make your X cost spells do a lot more. So Preston, Morgan, and myself, we all give it a B. B's across the board. This is a solid B tier commander. From someone who's played it, it's a lot of fun to play. If you you play it unfairly, it's whatever if that's how you want to play. But even if you're playing it fairly, it's still a lot of fun to play.
Yeah, I think it is kind of a Hydra's commander in the sense that it's in the right, like you have green, it's making the Hydra tokens. But it's just
a lot
of
Hydras have X in their casting cost.
Exactly. So that's true, but like you could just do like just generic X spells as well, which I think is what most people do, but that just accidentally means you'll play a bunch of Hydras because you're in green.
And that's lame. Everyone should play this deck with a bunch of Hydras in it because it's more fun that way.
It is more fun. I think you'll end up with a decent amount anyways, but I would argue that even with the infinite combo abilities of this card, I actually would argue that it's not even the coolest X spell commander. Last episode, Preston and I talked about Magus Lucia Kane, which is the Teamer one. That's the backup commander from the Tyranid precon from Warhammer. I think that one's way more interesting because it doubles your X spells, right? Is that what it does?
Yeah.
I think that's a lot more interesting. But with that said, it's still kind of cool. The Timmy and me likes the big Hydras. I can get behind it. It's fine. I wouldn't build it, but it's fine.
I didn't say this was the coolest. I did not say that. I said this was the best as far as strongest, most powerful.
That might be true.
This is more powerful because you can, like, instead of doubling stuff, you could just make each one X equals 100 million.
Yeah.
Which feels better than doubling to me.
Yeah. Did you have anything to add to that, Preston?
No, I feel about the same way you guys do. I do really like X spells. I've thought about doing one of these decks at some point, but I also would probably choose. I would probably choose Magus. We talked about that. I think we both gave it A's.
I think we both gave it an A. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is basically like a slightly less interesting version of it to me. Still fun though. Like I would not be mad if I saw someone else bust this bad boy out.
Perfectly solid. Right there in B. What do we got next, Preston?
Speaking of things that are fun, this isn't. Kinnan, Bonder Prodigy for a green and a blue. It's a 2/2 human druid. Whenever you tap a non-land permanent for mana, you add 1 mana of any type that permanent produced. And then for 5, a green and a blue, you look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a non-human creature card from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. It's just Simic. We all gave it C's. And yeah, it's just a Simic card.
It's just Simic. It does all the stuff. I mean, you have to pay more mana for it, but it has an infinite mana sink on it that does something that's busted. I mean, the main card that I've seen go with this commander in the 99 is Hullbreaker Horror. I mean, it just that card in this, it's not a fun time to play against. This card is strong.
Hullbreaker Horror should just be played more than it is because it's just a really strong card. I feel like people should play it more.
People have no idea. They see the high cost mana from it, and the casual player would be like, "Well, it does a lot of stuff, but it's so high, it's so expensive. It's so worth it. The value you get from it is incredible."
Yeah, Kinnan's boring because, Preston's right in the fact that it's Simic doing Simic things, but it's worse than that. I don't hate all Simic commanders. Kinnan sucks, though, because it's actually like a CEDH commander that just accidentally combos with a bunch of things. So that's actually the problem, is that if you sit down and you see a Kinnan deck, even if they're like, oh, don't worry, it's not CEDH, it's fair, they might still
You
accidentally
can't do
have a
fair.
combo in there, even if they don't realize they have a combo in there. So that's the problem with Kinnan.
I mean, it says specifically non-land permanents making mana, so it's technically a little more interesting than some of the other ones, but mana dorks versus lands is not that interesting.
These are the CEDH players that really took a hit from Mana Crypt being banned.
All right, well, Kinnan going down here in the C tier. All right, next up we have kind of an old school one. This is Oloro, Ageless Ascetic. How do you say that word? I'm just
I think you
I'm
nailed
not
it.
sure.
I think you nailed it, actually.
Thanks. This is from Commander 2013. This is a 6 mana Esper 4/5 giant soldier. At the beginning of your upkeep, you gain 2 life. Whenever you gain life, you may pay 1. If you do, draw a card and each opponent loses a life. And at the beginning of your upkeep, even if he's in your command zone, you gain 2 life. So this is like the precursor to Eminence. There were a couple other commanders that were probably from this era as well that were like playing around with like what would eventually become Eminence, which a lot of people don't like. But if you just want like an Esper life gain deck, this is a decent option for a commander, because even if it's not on the battlefield, it's gaining you life still. And that means it's going to trigger all of your things that say, when you gain life, do a thing. So it's automatically doing that without any extra investment. So that's really, really sweet. And then if you do get it onto the battlefield, it's probably going to draw you some cards and start doing direct damage to your opponents. So it's pretty good. So Jason and Preston gave it an A. I'm a little bit lower on it just because I think there's better commanders for life gain. And I don't really like Eminence. I think your commander should be in play if you're going to do something with your commanders. But I still give it a B. I don't hate it by any means. Averages out to an A. What do you guys got to say about it?
I don't think that the fact that that its ability activates in the command zone should hinder this very much, because until Eminence came along, we didn't have anything like this. It was cool, and
but this was
unique.
like 4. This was like 4 years before Eminence, though.
I know, but it's not this card's fault that they decided to put Eminence on at least 2 of the strongest commanders to ever exist. This card was just kind of cool, doing its own thing, and had its own unique thing, going on that no other commander did, and it just kind of gets pushed to the back burner now. Like, nobody really thinks about this card when they think of cards, commanders that activate from the command zone. And it's a cool deck. It's in cool colors. It leads to a lot of fun, life gain themed builds. And the one way to really stop this card is to just keep destroying it, and it goes to the command zone. Yeah, they're gonna gain life, but they're not gonna be able to draw cards off it or anything like that. And 21 commander damage kills somebody no matter how much life that they have. So stop complaining about like life gain.
Well, yeah, I don't hate life gain decks. I'm just saying that like this is like not that interesting as far as life gain commanders
I
go.
disagree. It's very interesting.
Isn't there an argument that because Oloro didn't like cause that much of chaos in the commander spheres, that they were like, maybe Eminence is okay? Like, surely they had that conversation.
And for this card,
so
it's
this
a lot
guy's
more
fault.
okay.
It's his fault.
It's a lot more okay on this card than it is on
but it might be his
Edgar.
fault. Yeah, but it might be his fault that we got there.
No, it's not his fault.
What do you think,
somebody
Preston?
else's fault.
So I put it in A with Jason. I'm a life gain Larry. One of my favorite things to do in a game of Magic is gain life. So obviously I'm high on it. And I think the reason his is, I'm just gonna call it Eminence because that's what it is. The reason his ability is like good but not broken is because 2 life, it does trigger stuff, but it's not like an oppressive thing. Like all the Eminence ones from that like that cycle that they all had it.
Commander,
the 2 that were
2017.
good, yeah, 17, that was it. The 2 that were good were unbelievably broken, and most people hate playing against them. and the 2 that aren't broken are terrible. This is strong, but totally manageable if you don't let them get away with it. Like, you can
get
absolutely
behind
deal
that.
with this commander.
I
So
can get
that's why
behind
I
that.
really like it.
Well, this cool guy's still going to end up here in the A. Look at our Esper boys up here, rocking out. Our cool little Esper boys. Jason, what do we got next? This is another one you've had before.
It's crazy. I've gotten 2 in a row so far that I've built. Yeah, so this next card is Sisay, Weatherlight Captain. For 2 to white, it's a 2/2 legendary creature human soldier. It says Sisay, Weatherlight Captain gets +1/+1 for each other color among legendary permanents you control. I said each other. It does include itself as a color for legendary permanents. And then it has an activated ability that says pay 1 of each color, search your library for a legendary permanent card with converted mana cost less than Sisay's power. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So a long time ago, I wanted to build a Legends deck, and I pulled this out of Modern Horizons, and I was like, "This is perfect. I'm gonna do this. This is gonna be what I build." And it ended up becoming a really powerful deck, just because a lot of the legendary permanents that you're gonna put into the deck are just inherently strong by themselves. So you pair them with other legendary permanents, and the deck just kind of does its thing. It's 5 colors, so you have no problem getting lands out as long as you build your mana base properly. Because of the ramp that you're going to have, you're not going to have a problem getting the colors that you need. And it allows you to do so many fun and cool things. You just play a whole deck that's just all commanders, or you just do legendary artifacts or legendary enchantments. Just anything like that. It's so cool. You could even do planeswalkers. You could do this as a planeswalkers deck because all planeswalkers are legendary. So this is just a lot of fun. Now, people kind of can turn this into a CDH deck for sure. That's not the route that I went with it, but you can do that. So I think that because of the versatility of this card and different ways that you can build it, that's why I really like it. Preston and I both gave this card an A, and Morgan gave it a B. Morgan being a little Debbie Downer over here.
Yeah, I'm just in a bad mood this week, guys. I'm just in a bad mood this week. I'm here to whatever you guys are ranking your commanders, I'm going down because I gotta send a message. All right, I don't know who I'm sending a message to.
He's like, what?
I don't know.
They like this card a lot. No,
I don't know who I'm sending a message to, but I'm sending it. You know what's really awkward is the World Tree is not legendary because wouldn't it be great if you could grab a land with this that fixes your mana for you to make it easier to do maybe multiple times in the game when you get to the late game? That would be cool, but the World Tree is awkwardly not legendary. That's kind of awkward. So the main reason I put this as at B, I think it's perfectly fine. I don't hate it. I didn't hate playing against it when Jason had this deck. It's just not a very interesting theme to me, especially if you're doing it in the context of modern Magic, where everything is designed for commander. So just everything is accidentally legendary. So you're just playing 5-color good stuff at that point with almost no restriction. And that's just not interesting to me. And if you're going to do legendaries matter, the one that we talked about last episode, I think it was Dihada, the Mardu Planeswalker one. I think that one's more interesting, at least as a commander. I also just think that tutors in the command zone are kind of eh. I'm not completely against the idea of tutors in the command zone, but I don't love it. So I just think it's fine.
Morgan, you're like this is your emo episode. You should put your hair down in the front. Just nothing's interesting. Nothing's interesting.
Scott's quite
I noticed something about Morgan's ratings. All of his negative opinions so far have been about women. Wow. Guys, we gotta cancel him. All the dudes he's putting in A and S and B, all the women are in C and D. He's got to get canceled. We can't keep letting this happen.
I can't believe. Don't worry. We get later on in the list. I'm ranking some women high up on the list. Don't worry about it, my guy.
Oh, okay.
Don't worry about it, my guy. I got you. I don't think I get this far in life being a sexist, but
also on that note, Sisay's a baddie.
Yeah. I mean, I can get behind that if that's what we're talking about. Yeah, if that's what we're talking about, but that's not what we're talking about. But Preston, any final thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think this is one of those where There are definitely interesting ways you can build her. Like I've considered building this before, like Sisay and swords. I was gonna maybe do all of the swords of blank and blank
Oh yeah. Mhm.
with her. I never ended up building it, but I did brew a decent mid of it. So there's some fun ways you can build around this.
Wait, are the Sword of cycles actually legendary? They're not legendary.
No,
I didn't think so.
no, but they're just ways to boost up her power in a way that doesn't require the other legendaries.
Okay,
And
that's
she's
true.
holding
Yeah,
a
that's cool.
sword. And it just sounds good, Sisay and swords.
Yeah. Well, Sisay is still going to end up here in A. Speaking of chicks that Morgan did give a good good grade to, Preston, what do we got next?
All right, next up we have Alayla, Artful Provocateur. For 1, a white, a blue, and a black. It's a 2/3 fairy warlock with flying, death touch, and lifelink. Other creatures you control with flying get +1/+0. And whenever you cast an artifact or enchantment spell, you make a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with flying. So let's see. We all gave it an A. You can do fairy tribal with this. You can do flying tribal. You can focus on artifacts. You can focus on enchantments. You can do a little bit of both. Just a lot of ways you can go with this, and a lot of them are strong.
The Alayla deck that I had for a while was a Voltron deck, which ultimately wasn't very good because like flying, death touch, lifelink is like good starting point, but it also is only 2 power to start off with. So it wasn't the best Voltron deck, but it definitely wasn't bad because while you're playing all of the auras and the equipment that you want to make Alayla more powerful, you're also getting these little bodies left behind that are going to give you extra attackers and blockers, which is we've talked about before when we've talked about Voltron decks. Is very, very important that you have other creatures in your deck. This is other creatures that your commander is making, and then you can skull clamp it. It's so awesome. So I love this, and yeah, I like what Preston said. I think some people, when this card came out, because it was one of the face commanders for the Brawl precons when that came out, and people were kind of low on just all of those in general because they were kind of like just generically too good, and they weren't like pointing you in a specific direction. But I kind of like open-ended commanders that let you try it in different ways, and I kind of like that.
The reason that I like this card so much is because I look at this and I compare it to Sithis, and I'm like, if you're gonna build enchantments, this is the way to do it. This is the one right here, boy. You cast a freaking doubling season and you get a little 1/1 blue fairy guy. Hell yeah, brother!
You can't cast doubling season with this one.
Why can't you cast doubling?
Because it's not green.
Just cheat.
Oh, okay. I guess I didn't consider that part. My bad.
Guys, we have a more important thing to notice, which is that Esper Gang go burr up here in A. Esper Gang go burr.
I will make a recommendation. I demand that you put Sisay above Aloro.
I can concede to that, sure.
I demand it.
All right. Next up, we have the Wise Mothman, which is for 1 in Sultai, a 3/3 insect mutant. This is it's one of the face commanders from the Fallout series. It has flying. When it enters or attacks, each player gets a rad counter. And then whenever 1 or more non-land cards are milled, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to X target creatures, where X is the number of non-land cards milled this way. As a reminder, radiation, it says at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, if you have any rad counters, mill that many cards. For each non-land card milled this way, you lose a life and a rad counter. So it's a way to just mill your opponents a little bit and do a little bit of damage on the way. I actually really like rad counters because it's usually if you're playing it, you have some kind of an advantage, whether you want things in your opponent's graveyard, you want things in your own graveyard, and then the damage actually stacks up a lot faster than you would think. You're like, oh, 1 damage per rad counter, whatever. It adds up pretty quick. And also, the Wise Mothman is either going to make itself huge and you're killing people with commander damage, which Steven almost did in the live stream we did of the Fallout precons, or you're just also getting other +1/+1 counter synergies. It's just pretty cool. Jason and I gave it an A. Preston gave it an S.
Yeah, so I like how you have a mill commander who actually makes the game like go forward, but not like one-shotting people. Because a lot of mill decks, they either take forever to get anything happen because they're doing all the small mill cards, or they do the mill things where it's like mill someone's half of their library, but then you double it or something, and this is not that fun a lot of times. But this one is doing mill while also dealing combat damage, so that's fun. Also, the thing that some people miss is you have to put a +1/+1 counter on X creatures. Some people, I've seen a lot of people play that wrong for some reason. So you do want a decently sized board to really make him at his most effective.
Yes.
This card's fun. I love the Fallout set. I really went crazy over those cards. It was my favorite of the Universes Beyond sets, excluding Lord of the Rings, because I feel like that's everyone's favorite. So like you know how the holiday version of Reese's are clearly the best Reese's, so everyone puts those aside. Then you list your other favorite Reese's. This is my favorite Universes Beyond set, excluding Lord of the Rings. So yeah, I just like this card a lot. I know a couple of people that have this deck, and it's fun to play against. It really is.
Heck yeah. So yeah, up here at top of A. Jason, what do we got next?
Next up, we have Queen Marchesa. For 1, a red, a white, and a black, it's a 3/3 with Death Touch and Haste human assassin. It says when Queen Marchesa enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. Nice. And then it also says that at the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent is the monarch, put a 1/1 black assassin creature token with Death Touch and Haste onto the battlefield. It's a commander that is going to bring the Monarch into the game 100% of the time. The Monarchy is such a cool mechanic to add into the game. It really changes the way the games play out because now you have people swinging at people just to get the Monarch, so people are losing life, just so that someone can have that title. It kind of makes the game a little Game of Thronesy, who's gonna do the most damage to who, so that you're gonna end up as the king at the end, the Monarch at the end of the game. And it also punishes your opponents for having the Monarch. Not so much punishes them, but it rewards you in a way for the Monarch being passed around. So it's something that enables really fun gameplays, and it's something that rewards you as the player who enabled really fun gameplays. So that's why I like it, and I think that's why you guys like it too, because we gave it A's across the board.
Reminder, Monarch is
top of A tier for me.
Yes. This is just a reminder. Monarch is like an emblem that comes into the game. This is at the beginning of your end step, you draw a card, but then whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, its controller becomes the Monarch. So, like Jason said, it just incentivizes combat. You're going after other people, keeps the game going, keeps combat going, makes the game a lot more interesting. And yeah, that's why I have it up there. I love the Monarch. I think this is a cool card. I have it in the 99 of a deck. I've thought about building a specific Queen Marchesa deck before because there's a lot of just cool, just the Monarch's fun. But then you can also play like cards that are unblockable. So you can go get the Monarch back really easy. You can, play goad stuff. So if you have the Monarch, you just make it so your opponents can't come get it from you because all their stuff is goaded. You're the good colors for that. You could skull clamp all the assassin tokens. Like this is epic, man. This is sweet. But yeah, what do you think, Preston?
Yeah, I feel pretty similarly. I was almost gonna put it in B just because once you start the Monarchy, I don't really like her card that much, but I'm just a simp for the Monarchy. I'm willing to overlook that fact just to have it easily accessible in the command zone.
Hell yeah! So now the hard question, boys, is where does she go compared to our Esper friends up here?
I already think that she goes top of A for me.
Can she go literally top of A if Preston said he almost put her in B?
That's what I said. I'd put her at top of A.
I put her in second place.
Okay, let's put her just below the Wise Mothman, but above our Esper friends. Let's do that.
I'm fine with that.
All right, Preston, what do we got next?
Alright. Next up, we have Thalia and the Gitrog monster for 1, a white, a black, a green, 4/4, human frog horror, with first strike and death touch. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Creatures and non-basic lands your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. And whenever Thalia and the Gitrog monster attacks, sacrifice a creature or land, then draw a card. This is just 2 already popular commanders stapled together. And we all gave it a B.
I had an A until about 20 seconds ago, and I changed it to a B. This is a commander I liked for a long time because I like Thalia. I play that in some decks. I like the Gitrog monster. I've played that in some decks. So why not put them together, especially because they're from both of those cards are from the era when I started playing Magic. So hell yeah. And it's just kind of strong. Like, it's just kind of bonkers strong. But the problem is it's just another land commander, really. And there's just a lot of those. I think as far as land commanders go, it's one of the more interesting options because you have graveyard synergies and sacrifice synergies, and there's a little bit of a taxing thing that lets you get in, theoretically lets you get in for some damage while your opponents are, having to worry about all their stuff being tapped. So I think it's more interesting than a lot of other land commander options, but it's still, I guess I'll drop it down to a B with you guys.
This card, it's too close to this card wants to be a stacks commander so bad. It's like something like, oh no, don't look at me. I'm letting you play additional lands and you get to draw cards and stuff. Don't mind that people's stuff enters tapped. Oh, don't worry about that. But it wants to be a stacks commander so bad. I couldn't bump it up to A. It is really cool. It's a strong card. And I mean, honestly, I was really close to putting this at C, but then I kept looking at it and I was like, man, Thalia's riding that frog, dude. I can't not put that up there because she's riding that frog, man.
It is pretty iconic.
Gitrog is an A, Thalia is a C. Together they make a B. It's just simple.
I can get behind that logic. All right, here we go. She's right here in B. I'm putting her like here. If you guys don't argue, I'm putting her there.
I got it.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, next up we have, why do I end up with the ones I don't know how to say? Captain in Garthod, sure, is for 3, a blue and a black, a 3/6 horror pirate that says horrors you control have menace. Nice. Whenever a horror you control deals combat damage to a player, that player mills that many cards. Nice. At the beginning of your end step, choose target artifact or creature card in an opponent's graveyard that was put there from their library this turn. Put it onto the battlefield under your control. I guess an upside of this is that it kind of gives you a couple options in the sense that the first couple lines of text make it sound like it's play horrors, which is cool. And I think that's what a lot of people will do with this. But really, it's just a mill/theft deck. And you just play a bunch of mill cards and you get the scariest stuff from your opponent's back, which are probably the creatures or artifacts anyways. So I think it's kind of misleading, but I gave it a B. I think it's fine. And then, wow, you guys are high on this one too. You guys gave it A's.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can do the mill thing, but I do like how it lets you play a weird creature type. That's not super popular, but there are definitely some strong creatures in it.
See, this is another one that I put it in an A because it's a flavor win for me. It's really, I think, a B, but the flavor of this is so cool. So think about it. This is Davy Jones. And Davy Jones, he defeats his enemies and then he travels to the depths and he's like, join my crew and we'll do this to other people. And they're like, heck yeah, man, I'll do that for sure. So he's just recruiting people to his pirate crew. I honestly wish that the creatures that you get would become horrors in addition to the other types. That'd be pretty sick flavor wise.
That actually might be able to pull me up to an A if it did that. If it did that, dude, I might make it an A.
But I just love it.
It's self-fulfilling, yeah.
It's so cool. I just think that it's a really, really cool card to play. It does mill in somewhat of an interesting way. I get it. It's kind of like just Mill dressed up like an octopus captain, but I think that's cool. That brought me up to an A.
It's not quite enough for me to do up to an A, but I did just do a Scryfall search for the horrors in these colors, and there are actually ones that you would just like play like in decks. Like there's Hullbreaker Horse, Psychosis Crawler, Ravenous Chupacabra. Like there's cards that you would just like be okay with playing anyways, even if you didn't get the horror boost. So yeah, it's all right. So up here in A, does anyone have a preference on where on A? A's gotten quite stacked this episode. We've been overall quite high on these guys today.
We're getting closer to the top.
That's true. That's true. We are getting closer to the top.
There is one thing I think drags it down just a little, though. He and Gyruda should work better together, and if they don't, and it makes me sad.
That is a bummer. That is definitely.
No, I don't think necessarily they should work better together because Gyruda feels like the sea monster that this guy would be attacking or fighting against. You know,
or it's the Kraken, and he's Davy Jones.
I guess that's fair. I guess you make a good point.
All right, Jason, what do we got next?
So next up, we have Hawkball of the Surging Soul. For 2, a green and a blue, it's a legendary creature, Merfolk Scout. It's a 3/3, and it says, at the beginning of each combat on your turn, each Merfolk creature you control explores. Exploring is where you reveal the top card of your library. You put it into your hand if it's a land. Otherwise, you put a +1/+1 counter on the creature that is exploring, and then you put that card back, or you put it into your graveyard. Then it says, whenever it attacks, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield if you don't draw a card. I mean, it's fine. It's cool. It's good. I don't get excited about it when I read it and when I look at it. I'm just like, eh. I mean, if you're going to build this as a Merfolk deck, there's just better Merfolk commanders out there. I just 4 mana 3/3 that, you know, it needs to attack to do something. You really do just need to go to combat, and it is going to explore itself. If it's the only Merfolk that you have on the battlefield. But yeah, it's just a very underwhelming Merfolk commander to me. So I'm not the biggest fan of it. So I gave it a C. Morgan gave it a B, and Preston, really down on this card, gave it a D.
Interesting. Okay, I have some defensive points to make about this card, but before I make them, Preston all the way down there at D. Go.
Yeah, I don't mind tearing into this. It's partly just another Simic commander. Play creature, play land, go burr. So I'm not high on it for that.
Sure.
But also, personally, I just hate Simic Merfolk after playing on Arena. Like those couple years when those Ixalan sets were first coming out. It was miserable.
Like OG and Ixalan?
Now, yes. Ixalan and what is it? Rivals of Ixalan?
Rivals,
second
yeah.
one? Yeah. Like Merfolk were just so annoying, and I'm just being spiteful and petty.
Man's
okay.
I don't like the Ixalan.
Wow.
I am.
So here's my defensive points on Hawkball. I would argue, Jason, that this is the best Merfolk commander if you're in Simic. I know some people like to build Merfolk in other color combinations. I would argue this is the best one because it's only 4 mana. It comes down really, really early. You go to combat and it immediately gives you value. And Hawkball not only, I think, is probably the best Merfolk commander, but I think it also just opens up to you playing other interesting cards in your 99 when you're filling in the gaps around your Merfolk. Because you're exploring, you're opening up the possibilities for +1/+1 counter stuff. You're opening up the possibility for graveyard shenanigans, and you're opening up the possibility of top deck manipulation. Your Sensei's divining top evangelist. You should love that. So I just think explore is kind of neat. And I do think that Preston's point of it just kind of being a Simic go burr point. Yeah, but that's also just what Merfolk are. And I just accept that. But I think that because of the exploring, it's allowing you to play these other cards to get other synergies that are interesting to go alongside your Merfolk. And it's also at least winning the game. Like a lot of these Simic go burr decks have a hard time actually winning the game. They just spin their engine for a long time. At least Hawkball is making your creatures really freaking big and you're killing people really fast.
If your Simic
think-
Go Burr deck isn't killing people or winning the game
Well, you're
when
just
you
drawing
go
cards,
Burr,
playing lands, drawing
you
cards, playing
didn't
lands, drawing
build the
cards, playing
Simic
lands.
deck right. If that's all you do though, and you don't have a way to utilize that stuff, you didn't build the Simic deck right. You're not Simicking properly.
I don't know.
I did want to say I still think Kumena is technically stronger.
I agree.
I don't like either one of them.
Well, can we at least agree that it's above Kinnan?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
All right. Well, it's still down here in C. It's at least there though. All right. Preston, what do we got next?
Oh, that's another fun one. Urza, Lord High Artificer for 2 and 2 blue, 1/4 human artificer. When Urza, Lord High Artificer, enters the battlefield, you create a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token. With this, creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. You can tap an untapped artifact you control to add a blue, and then you can pay 5, shuffle your library, then exile the top card. Until end of turn, you may play that card without paying its mana cost. Let's see. Morgan gave it a C. Jason gave it a C. I gave it an F. I hate this card.
Ah, man. I was originally a little bit higher on this one, but it's just too good. Because really, if this is your commander, okay, I think in the 99 of certain decks, it's still very, very strong, but like you could argue that it has homes in the 99s of decks where you're just like, okay, it is what it is. But as a commander, if you're actually playing it as your commander, it's like an egg style deck where you're taking these like really, really long combo-y turns where you're playing a bunch of 0 and 1 mana artifacts, maybe 2 mana artifacts, and that are just immediately now mana rocks. And now it's going to be really easy to have like infinite mana at some point. And now you have an infinite mana sink on the commander itself. I don't know if this is CEDH-able, but I feel like it probably is, especially because you're in blue.
I don't know about it anymore, but it definitely was at some point.
Yeah, I feel like I had heard about that
for sure.
I feel like I had heard that before, but yeah, I feel like there's not a fair way to play this as your commander. I like it as there's some funny things you can do with it in the 99 of some decks, but yeah, as your commander, I feel like it's kind of too strong.
This will tell you what I think of this card. I run this in my Joyra deck because it just kind of just goes really crazy with Joyra. I get all these artifacts out. I can now tap those artifacts for mana to play more artifacts, which then I can tap for mana to play more artifacts, which then I can tap for mana to play more artifacts. Building this as a commander, though, you're basically always going to pull to generating infinite mana and using that infinite mana sink and just playing everything in your deck and just winning the game. It's, the reason that I don't like this card is because of how competitive it is, but the way that it is competitive. Because you're almost, as the opponent, incentivized to just play out them activating that ability to see what cards they do. Because it's I don't know. I just feel like that the lengthy gameplay that this card always leads to, unless you're just like, all right, yep, we're just going to scoop now that you have infinite mana. And that's not fun either. That's boring.
Yep.
So it's strong, it's powerful. Like I said, I run it in Joyra because Joyra is my competitive deck, but I can't pick this higher than a C as a commander.
I had it in the 99 of my Thopter deck that I used to have because if with a Thopter Foundry and Sword of the Meek, you can make infinite Thopters, which is just kind of funny. But it doesn't actually win the game by itself. So it's kind of funny. Like there's things like that you can do, or like in Jason's case, yeah, it's just in the 99 of like a strong deck. Yeah, it's fine. But yeah, down here at C, we'll put it in the middle of C, I guess. All right. Next up, we have I lost my spot. It's my turn to read.
Mm-hmm.
Omnath, Locus of All. This is for one of each color, except the black mana is Phyrexianized. It's a Phyrexian elemental 4/4. Omnath has been completed. If you would lose unspent mana, that mana becomes black instead. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that card if it has 3 or more colored mana symbols in its mana cost. If you do, add 3 mana in any combination of its colors and put it into your hand. If you don't reveal it, put it into your hand. So, oh man, that's a lot of words. I gave it a B, Jason gave it a C, Preston gave it an A. I think it's perfectly okay. I actually remember being excited about the idea of a 5-color Omnath, and then we got it, and I was just like, eh. Like, I wasn't actually that hype about it. It's reminiscent of OG Omnath, like mono green Omnath, in the sense that you get to keep the extra mana around. But at that point, I'd rather just play mono green Omnath, because this is like, you're taking a decent gamble on what the other ability is doing, and it's going to force you to play a bunch of like really awkward, clunky cards. And I feel like it's actually hard to play this one on a budget, which I usually don't try to keep that as like a factor, but it is worth noting that if you have a bunch of like 3+ colored spells in your decks, that means your fixing has to be pretty good, so that's kind of awkward. And then Omnath's only letting you hold on to black mana, so, and then you probably are just winning with a Torment, a Hailfire, or an Exsanguinate, which is kind of boring. Yeah, it's okay, I guess, but I wouldn't play it.
Yeah, it's not the greatest Omnath out there. I was very underwhelmed by this card. Kind of like you, I was excited to see what a 5-color Omnath would look like, and then this came out, and I was like, really? This is what we get? Like, I get it. You're getting card advantage because you're putting cards in your hand no matter what, and you don't necessarily have to reveal them. But it's like, if you want to get the mana, you have to reveal them, and it's like, I just don't always like playing games where I'm telling my opponents what I'm putting in my hand. I don't like my opponents knowing what I have before I play it. And it's just, this is not the strongest Omnath that I've seen, and it's just not the most interesting Omnath that I've seen, and so I gave it a C because I don't really care about this card.
Well, I'm a little higher on it. Part of that is I just kind of like the idea of playing some of those jankier cards that have at least 3 mana symbols in them. I feel like you could do something kind of fun, or you could play some of the pet cards. You're like, I want to put this in other decks, but all those mana symbols make it kind of hard. And something you could do, instead of making it 5-color, you really just make it like a 1-color deck that you splash enough lands in to get Omnath out in the first place. So I think there's a couple ways you can build it to be kind of fun. Jason, this is a deck where you want to manipulate the top of your deck a lot. That makes you a little more excited about it at all. So,
and not enough.
But I see. But yeah, I am a little disappointed. This is how we finally got 5-color Omnath. But that's more sort of the story, I think, than anything else.
Yeah, I can get behind that. So he's still going to end up here in the B range. So we got 5 more to go through, and we're already about at the hour mark. So we better hurry on through these last few. Jason, take it away with the next one.
Next up, we have EDHRec of the Charmed Apple. For 1, a black and a white, is a 2/4 human warlock, and it says each creature that's enchanted by an aura you control can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of auras you control. It's an enchantment deck, specifically an auras deck, and it's a planeswalkers deck, and it's a life gain deck. Those are 3 pretty interesting card types or mechanics or whatever you want to call it to slap onto one commander that's a 2/4 for 3. A 2/4 for 3 by itself is a decent creature. That's a decent body. It's going to provide you with some protection, and you're going to be able to get it out pretty early in the game. I just think that it's interesting that this deck wants you to enchant your opponent's stuff. So it wants you to like goad their creatures, or you would just do a bunch of interesting stuff. Like I think that there's a lot of interesting builds for this. Orzhov is probably my favorite 2-color combination. So I was pretty cool and happy about this card. I gave it a B. Morgan also gave it a B, and Preston, even higher on it than I was, gave it an A.
Yeah,
Preston, I mean, I gave it a little higher because this is one of those cards you can make a group hug plus slug deck, and I just really like cards that let you do that. Like, because you can put positive auras on your opponent's creatures. So like
Yeah.
you're helping them out, but they can't hit you with them, and you're dealing damage to them at the same time, and you're gaining life. So this is just right up my alley. Never built it myself, but I've thought about it a couple times.
Yeah, I've thought about it too. The reason that I am still down here at a B and not up there at an A is because I think it's going to draw more hate than it's worth. Because do you know what's a really good way to make your opponent more aware of what you're doing? By putting your cards on their playmat. And that's what this is doing. It's drawing a lot more attention to you. And they're going to start noticing that draining really fast. And they're also, you could do like the group huggy kind of thing, but you're also probably doing a lot of the group slug. You're actually probably putting like enchantments on their like pacifism type of effects where they can't attack or block anyways or whatever. So it's going to draw a lot of hate on top of the fact that it just straight up doesn't do anything against certain decks. Like if they are like a deck that doesn't play, like if there's some kind of control deck or a like planeswalker deck and they just don't have a lot of creatures, then this doesn't really do anything. Or if they're a sacrifice deck and you go to enchant their thing, they're just going to sack all their stuff anyways. So there's also just a lot of the times where this just doesn't do anything. It's a little, so that's why I'm still down here at a B. I think as far as like design space, it's really, really cool, but it just has too many like little things stacked up against it that keep me down here at B instead of joining you up there at A.
That's fair.
You could also build this as a curses deck if you wanted, where you're not necessarily enchanting your opponent's creatures, but you're enchanting them and still getting that life drain and life gain effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. What's the other curse commander? Is it Rakdos?
The only one that I ever played was Gen Arcanum Weaver from Commander Legends. That was the only other. I mean, it's not specifically one that cares about Aura Curses, but it's a pretty good Aura Curses commander.
Okay.
The main one is black, blue, and red. I forget her name, but like she says something about curses.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Ariet's going to be somewhere here in the B range. We'll put her. I don't know. We can put her at top of B. You guys okay with that? Top of B?
I'm fine with that.
All right. Preston, what do we got next?
All right. Next up, we have Sadar Jabari of Zalfir. 1, a white, a blue, and a black for a 4/3 human knight with eminence. Here we go again. Whenever you attack with one or more knights, if Sadar is in the command zone or on the battlefield, you draw a card, then discard a card. It has flying and first strike, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you return target knight creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Let's see. You two gave it a B, and I gave it a C. It's an eminence commander, which again we talked about earlier. Can be good, can be bad, depending on it. This one's fine, and it has a specific creature type you want to play. I'm not big on Knight, so that's why I put it in C, but you guys were a little higher on it.
Yeah, I think as far as Eminence abilities goes, this is one of the safer ones, but I say that and it's still like, it's good. It's card advantage. And then also like the precon specifically, well, and the face commander cares a little bit about your graveyard. This is a face commander for one of the March of the Machine precons. But with that said, it's just kind of like the best Knights commander. If you do like Knights, this is just your best option. And it's kind of cool. It's kind of neat as far as Eminence goes. It's not the most broken one. So I think it's just perfectly fine here at B.
Couldn't agree more.
I think you missed out a little on not having red, but...
Oh, that's probably true, but I think... I actually think that this commander is strong enough with the both with the eminence and with the resiliency of being able to rebuild with getting stuff back from your graveyard. I think those two things balance out enough that it's worth. Because what would be the color that you don't run? Like if you were like, would it be Mardu, right? Like if you had red,
Mardu, I think.
you'd probably drop blue. So at least blue is giving you like, there's a few cool knights that you're getting by having access to blue, but you're also just having like protection and stuff, which is nice. But yeah, Sidar's going to go somewhere in here, somewhere in the B range. All right, we got 3 more. We'll each take 1 more. Next up, here we go. Here's one that I've had before. This is Prosper Tomebound, which is one of the face commanders from the first D&D set. This is for 2, a black and a red, a 1/4 Tiefling Warlock with Death Touch. At the beginning of your end step, exile the top card of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. And then whenever you play a card from exile, you create a treasure token. This is a deck that I had for a very, very long time. And there's an episode of our gameplay series that we filmed, and it won't come out for a while still, where I played it. But it is actually taken apart now. And I guess I'll go over our ratings before I explain why I took it apart. I gave it a B. Jason gave it a C. Preston gave it a D. So they're pretty low on it. I actually would give this an A for gameplay diversity, because I think this is actually one of those commanders that I like, where it's a little more open-ended, because every set there's like 3 new cards that people are like, oh, it's good in Prosper, because it either cares about treasures or it cares about playing stuff from exile. That's already open-ended enough. You could be a play from exiles deck, which you kind of need to be, but you can also like have some varying degree on how much you care about treasures and other tokens shenanigans. But then also, because we have so many cards that care about those things, you kind of have to pick and choose. And yeah, the best ones you'll probably see in a lot of Prosper decks, but for the most part, people are just playing the ones that they like the most. So you take 2 Prosper decks and you put them against each other, they're probably looking very, very different from each other. So I actually like that. I think that's kind of fun. And I think that while it's kind of obnoxious that it's giving you card and mana advantage, I think it's like one of the least egregious offenders in that department. The reason I bumped it down to a B, though, is because holy crap, it is such a pain to maintain the board state. Because when you play these kind of decks and these cards that let you play from exile, you have like, these I can play this turn, these I can play till the end of my next turn, these I can play whenever, and you just end up with these multiple piles of multiple exile piles that you have to keep track of, like timing restrictions and stuff. And it's very cumbersome, especially when you get into like the like an academy manufacturer or something, and now you have way too many tokens on the battlefield. It just becomes a lot to keep track of, and that makes it more mentally taxing and over time less fun to play.
I've never really enjoyed playing against Prosper, and I think that that's the main reason for it, is because whenever Prosper gets going, the board state just gets out of hand and it becomes too much to manage. I just not the biggest fan of playing against Prosper, and I think Prosper is like it is one of those commanders that is going to enable you to do a lot of different styles of deck building, but it just does the thing. It does the thing that it wants to do, and that I just get bored with it, and it's annoying to have to keep up with all the stuff that the Prosper player is doing.
Yeah, I would already not be a big fan of this, but the fact that we have had to deal with Morgan's version of it for so long, which is a specifically very annoying version of it, made me put it even lower. This is just one of those commanders where you can literally take a 30-45 minute turn, do 1,000 things, and still have not won the game and have to pass. And I just don't like commanders that do that. I hate this card. The highs and lows of this episode for me have been extreme.
Well, that's going to average out to the C range. Do we want it above or below Hackball?
Put it at the very bottom.
No. We're not doing that.
No.
It can't go at the bottom of C. That's ridiculous.
You're right.
I'll keep it below Hackball for your sanity, even though you didn't like that one either.
I'm fine with that.
All right, we got 2 more. These we're a little higher on. What do we got next, Jason?
So next up we have Tom Bombadil. It's 1 of each color, 4/4 God Bard. As long as there are 4 or more lore counters among sagas you control, Tom Bombadil has hexproof and indestructible. And then it says, whenever the final chapter ability of a saga you control resolves, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a saga card. Put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This ability triggers only once each turn. I think I would have made this card an S tier if that ability triggered more than once a turn. That would be sweet, dog. But still, I gave this card an A, Morgan gave this card an A, and Preston gave it an S. So Preston's really high on this. I love this card because, number one, it's Tom Bombadil. It's Lord of the Rings. It's a cool card. And the flavor of this card is immaculate. Tom Bombadil is this being that just loves to tell Frodo stories. He loves to tell him stories, man. Loves to just talk about all the stuff that he's seen. And so it's fitting.
Things.
It's fitting that sagas are what this card was built around. So, and it's a strong commander. It's just it has a strong ability. It has the ability to make itself hexproof and indestructible. That's insanely powerful. Sagas can be really broken. It's 5 colors, so you can play all the sagas you want. I really like this card. I think it's definitely an A for me.
Yeah, I'm with Jason in the sense that like I'm pretty close to bumping it up to an S there with Preston. But the problem is like it's still an enchantment deck, guys. You're still gonna play all the enchantress, boring, spinning the wheels kind of stuff. And then the other thing is that there are some like really busted sagas, but for the most part, they're just like incremental value over multiple turns. Like they're not like the most oppressive thing in the world. So like it's still an enchantment deck where it's just spinning its wheels and has a hard time winning. With that said, though, like I was like talking crap on Sithis, I've talked crap on other enchantment decks throughout the series, but I have said that there are ones that when they point you in a more specific direction, I like that more. Tom Bombadil's there. He also goes up in value because it's Lord of the Rings. He also goes up in value because sagas are just like cool. They're kind of fun. They play like if you want like the weirdness of Planeswalker decks, but you want it to just happen and not have to think there with your brain spinning a trillion miles an hour, play sagas instead. I think it's like the same kind of like adrenaline rush, but you don't have as many like decision points. And also, if you're actually worried about Tom Bombadil being too strong, which he's not because sagas aren't that busted, I actually don't think he's going to be indestructible that often because sagas are going to go away. Like they don't stay for very long. So you have to like ramp, and then like play multiple sagas with Tom Bombadil in order for that to happen, I think. But yeah, it's close to an S for me, but it's an A. I think this is one of the more interesting enchantment commanders because it points you in a very specific direction, and sagas are just really neat, and Lord of the Rings is really neat.
2 things for me about what you just said. Number one, I think that it's going to be hexproof and indestructible more often than you think because it is replacing the sagas that you lose. So you're always going to have sagas back onto the battlefield. The other thing is, I just love the idea of going full role playing with this, and then every time you play a saga, you just like, as Tom Bombadil, be like, "We're going to tell a story of a giant kraken," or "We're going to tell the story of an evil dragon." It just sounds like a lot of fun.
There's also like funny things that you can do where we've talked about some of these cards before, but there's like cards that like can like move counters around. You can proliferate. Like there's other like things that you can do that are specifically caring about how many of these lore counters you have, which is kind of cool. It's a nice extra twist on the enchantment stuff. But any other S points for it, Preston?
Yeah, it's a good thing this only does it once per turn, otherwise this would no longer be an S tier commander for me. If this could go as many times as it went per turn, you would play your entire deck every single time you pulled this deck out. Because you have all 5 colors, which means you have access to every proliferate effect in the game. So if there was no hard limit on it, you would just pump out every single card of your deck almost every single time. It'd be way too easy to abuse that. Well, maybe more than once, but not an unlimited amount of times would be okay.
Yeah, for me, that's more what I was talking about. Like say like this ability triggers only twice each turn, or like it does something else. Like if this ability has triggered 3 or more times, something like that.
How many members of the Fellowship ran into Tom Bombadil in the book? Because that's how many times you should be allowed to do it per turn.
Wasn't it just the Hobbits?
Super flavorful,
I think.
I don't think so. Wasn't there more? It doesn't really matter. Anyways, he's going up here in top of A-ish. Do we want to put him at the tippy top of A? Or
yeah, probably.
All right, cool.
Because you're both A, almost S, and I'm S, so.
All right, Preston, take us home with our last card of the day.
All right, finally we have another Omnath here, Locus of Creation. It's everything but black for a 4/4 elemental. When he enters the battlefield, you draw a card, and then he has Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 4 life if this is the first time this ability has resolved. If it's the second, you add one of all your colors, and if it's the third time, Omnath deals 4 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker you don't control. So Morgan gave it a C. Me and Jason gave it a B. It's a landfall deck. You might do some elemental stuff if you want to. He replaces himself when you play him. There's a couple ways you can build around it if you focus on a specific landfall trigger. There's a lot of things you can do with him.
It blows my mind that people play this as an elementals commander when literally 3 mana Omnath is the one that actually cares about elementals. This just happens to be an elemental, and this one's just busted. The reason I have this as a C is it's just too efficient. Like, I already am kind of bored of land decks, and I would like probably knock them down at least half a grade just because I'm tired of land decks. This one's too good because it automatically replaces itself. And then like you can easily get through all of those modes in one turn easily. Because you can play your fetch lands, you could have Crucible of World kind of effects. You could play your explorations where you have multiple land drops a turn. You could just play your normal ramp spells. It's very easy to just hit all of the landfall triggers every turn. And then if you have your timing right, with your fetch lands, you can also trigger them on other people's turns as well. It's just a little too good. It does a little bit too much for how little mana you're putting into it. When you're also a landfall deck, and you're going to have all the mana and ways to abuse it anyways.
Yeah, I couldn't rate this lower than the other Omnath that we talked about today, so I had to give it a B. But I'm right there with you. I'm not a big fan of this card. It's really, really strong. All the Omnath decks kind of go crazy, and they're not all the most fun to play against. Just because it can be really, really hard to like get a win when this card even starts going off a little bit. It's definitely powerful, and it's cool if this is the type of stuff that you want your landfall deck to be doing, but just I'm not the most excited about it. But it is definitely better than the other Omnath we talked about today.
As far as power, yes. I would still argue that the 5-color Omnath is at least more interesting. So, are we throwing him above or below other Omnath here in B? At bottom of B?
I think he's above the other Omnath. Preston, it seems like you have to be the deciding vote, because I think he's above that Omnath. Morgan thinks he's below that Omnath.
I think
5-color Omnath's more interesting.
If I was going to build one of them, I'd do the 5-color one if I was going to build them. So I guess I put that one ahead slightly.
All right, there we go. Boom, there we go. That's it. We did it, boys. All right, that is the next 20 commanders from our multi-episode series going over the top 100 commanders according to EDHRec. We have 2 more episodes to go. We are over the halfway mark. So if you are not already subscribed, make sure you're subscribed so you see those next 2 parts as they come out. We'll get to them hopefully within the next couple of weeks. We only have a few more episodes left in the year. It'd be kind of cool if we could knock this out before the end of the year. I don't know if that's possible. But yeah, let us know if you agree or disagree with any of our final decisions today. And we will see you guys later.
Bye.